Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, training camp is officially here, and there's been plenty of good news here this week. Pitt has gotten off to its start officially. 5 practices according to Friday. They had off today, Sunday. They'll be back at it on Tuesday with Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers back down on the South Side facility. A lot of good topics here tonight. Many different good headlines that we've been talking about for a number of different reasons, as you can imagine. A number of topics here. The running back room. We've talked about it before, potentially being, as is, a potential weakness for the Pitt Panthers this year. Pat Narduzzi comes out day one and talks about how 3 of those running backs are out for the year. And potentially one could return, but not till later in the year. But the room that was truly a weakness on the offense at this point of the game is now truly a weakness, as the numbers across the board seem to be a possible issue down the road with just really 4 guys that can run the football for Pitt this year. Also, too, a number of different players that we've heard about through really 5 practices. The first 2 were really just in helmets, T-shirts, and shorts. These last 3 have been a part of really, your helmet and shoulder pads. They call it skellies. I mean, at the end of the day, they're really in full pads at that point. So there was a lot of good contact and things that we were hearing going on. But listening to the football players talk this past week about a number of football players, young guys, some veteran guys who have stood out so far during the OTAs during July, but also during the 5 practices that they've had so far. So we're going to talk about that tonight as well. And then around the league, a number of players and a number of teams getting ready and their training camps. Bill Belichick down in North Carolina begins his venture with North Carolina, but also behind enemy lines. West Virginia seems to be having major issues down in Morgantown, as Rich Rodriguez has talked about how their practices have been really bad up to this point. Players not finishing practice, guys leaving out of practice, injuries, but also, too, they still have guys looking for waivers. So the West Virginia Mountaineers are a little bit behind as they begin their new season under Rich Rodriguez, and one which I believe that Rich Rod will not get it turned around there, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. But first up, you guys always know the show is sponsored by Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. Of course, the great signage, Icy Light. We certainly heard a lot about that on the Pat McAfee show when it came to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Talked about the Nectar of the Gods, which is pretty hilarious, but very cool partnership with the University of Pittsburgh. Great development there. And again, guys like Bill and Alan, 2 great individuals, people who really enjoy Pitt athletics and are big supporters of Pitt athletics, including Pitt football. Make sure you go in there. They have plenty of different selections, your light beers, your heavier lagers, number of different areas and number of different beers you can look at to make sure that your thirst is satisfied. And plenty of different people in there, but also great people. And anytime you can help out a small business, it's always a major plus. Make sure you go to Colonial Beer, located at 4986 Library Road in Bethel Park, PA 15102. The show is also sponsored by Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson, an attorney on your side. Give them a call at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Again, Brian Thompson, a tremendous individual. One of the greatest things about him being a smaller law firm, unlike the larger ones, he cares about you, the individual, doesn't treat you like a number. He guides you through the process from beginning to end on any issues that you potentially have. And if he doesn't have the answer, he still guides you through the process to make sure he gets you in front of the right people. Brian's truly a great individual, comes from a great family, has a great family, and does a lot of volunteer work in the community. Make sure you give Brian Thompson a call. If you're looking for an attorney, give Brian Thompson a call at Thompson Law Group with Brian Thompson. Call them today at 724-799-8404 or visit them at thompsonattorney.com. Last but not least, the show is sponsored by the K Collection, the coffee brand by Austin Kitchen, the kingscraft.com. The cool bag here, again, this is my personal favorite. I've tried all 3 brands that he has, the 3 different types of coffee brands, the 3 ones that he's created himself through numerous of testing. But this one truly is my favorite personally, that he uses before every game, before he gets his professional day going. The AK Espresso. Personally, me, I love this. I love the brand. I love how he has a cool design on here. Again, the K Collection, the backward K. Make sure you go get yours today. I've never been a coffee person, but I am now, because all I need is one of these babies in the morning, and it gets me going when I'm at my office. So make sure you go see the K Collection coffee brand by Austin Kitchen. Go on www.thekingscraft.com and get yours today. So, guys, we're hopping into it. It's finally here. We're done with the off-season affairs. We're done with the potential hype, everything else in between. College football is really back here in the month of August, even with the National Football League, the Hall of Fame game being played. But now the spring practices, the fun stuff of where we truly find out and hear about this team on a consistent basis. But more importantly, the first game against the Duquesne Dukes on August 30th at Acrisure Stadium. Pretty crazy to think we're only 3 Saturdays away from the opener at Acrisure Stadium. Guys, but a number of different topics, and the one thing I wanted to talk to you guys first about was the one position group besides, and we talked about the offensive line, a number of different guys through there, and we'll talk about them tonight and the stuff that I'm hearing in terms of position battles, because it seems as if really the right side of the line, Lyndon Cooper, obviously a tremendous leader on this team. I would not be shocked if he's a captain this year. Takes a hold of the center position. B.J. Williams at right guard, and Ryan Bayer returns to right tackle, a position where he's been really at his best. Much more his attributes really fill those roles there. And he's done a hell of a job in camp so far, even in the OTAs during July. Those 3 positions are really solidified there, with the 2 other positions, left tackle and left guard, that are really up for grabs at this point. But the number one real issue I think I have, and the weakness that I have on the offense, is the running back room. And we heard a lot about this, really the first day of camp. Pat Narduzzi talks about the lack of depth, but also Derek Davis, who we thought would be returning at some point this year, had a very gruesome injury against Boston College. Hometown hero out of Gateway is now out for the year and medically redshirting. He's now going to be a part of the coaching staff. Derek Davis Jr. will be probably more than likely done for his career, will be part of the coaching staff this year, will not count towards the 85 scholarships or any of the scholarships up to 100. True freshman running back Jaylen Brown was a decommitment from the University of Louisville, is also out this year. And lastly, other true freshman Saquon Smith, also out for the year. I think that they potentially talked about Jaylen Brown, the decommitment from Louisville, who committed to Pitt, could potentially return later on in the season, but it's not guaranteed. They're kind of having them both of this at this point really out for the year. So we'll continue to monitor how he progresses. He came into really the University of Pittsburgh with that injury. He already had his surgery to make sure he corrected an issue in his knee, if I'm not mistaken. It could be something else. I thought I could have swore I saw something about his knee. But those 2 guys are out, plus Derek Davis. So 3 running backs are out. And that makes you think, well, they only have 3 running backs: Desmond Reed, Juelz Goff, and Jakirian Boozy Turner, the true freshman who comes in this year. Another true freshman. They brought in 3 freshman running backs. Only 2 will be eligible this year due to being healthy. But they also add a 4th running back who comes into the University of Pittsburgh, and if I'm not mistaken, on his 8th year in college football. And that's going to be Jalen Williams, running back transfer from Western Carolina. You can imagine, yes, another Western Carolina player. I think we can all say the Desmond Reed experiment has certainly panned out, so I will guide this and let this go with a guy like Cade Bell, who thinks he's a good idea to bring him in here, knows the offense, is able to run those guys around. I don't expect him to get major carries this year. I think that the top 3, again, Desmond Reed, Juelz Goff, and then Jakirian Boozy Turner will be the 3 guys and the workhorses that really take this football team where it needs to go. But when you look at this roster right now, you really got 4 running backs who can play, and we went through how many different running backs last year. To me, this is the number one weakness on the Pitt team, and it will be the weakness now, and it will be going forward. We talked about it during the offseason. One of the things I was very unhappy with Pitt is that they didn't go out and get a guy that could potentially come in here and help compete, help be able to really build that room out to where they had a bigger back. There were some big back names that I heard that were really interested in coming to the University of Pittsburgh. Really 2 running backs from the SEC who were very much interested in coming here. And Pat Narduzzi said the running back room was good. Don't know why he said that. Don't know what he was looking at, but God bless him. Just one of the other mistakes that he made, I think, potentially in that running back room. But we'll monitor it. They've got 3 running backs there right now that we can guarantee that we'll be focusing on a lot of our attention on. And that's going to be, again, Desmond Reed, the starter, Juelz Goff, and then Jakirian Boozy Turner. Really all of those guys, you look at Jakirian Boozy Turner, 5'10", 5'11" almost. I mean, he's really probably the biggest back in that room. You would have loved to have a bigger back when it comes to the running back room at Pitt, but they don't go out and get that guy. Jalen Williams, who will be a preferred walk-on, he'll come in Now, if he tears it up here during camp, they can potentially put him on scholarship. That can always happen, too. He'll probably be the biggest back in the room at like 5'11", 225 pounds. So at least he's a bigger back, but he's gone through injuries. He's in his 8th year. Really hasn't performed at any level where he's been beforehand. He was in the Power 4 at one point out of high school, had numerous offers, but really hasn't performed to a level that we've seen so far during his career. So I'm not going to put a lot of stipulation and a lot of confidence in that now. And I really think that Pitt's really on its top 3 running backs, and we'll see what that looks like. Cade Bell loves those smaller backs. Personally, I'm good with the smaller backs. You'd like to have one big guy in there just to be able to offset it, create a little bit of differential when you're going against some of these football teams. But he has truly been about the smaller running backs, and we're going to go with it this year, and we're going to see exactly how this goes and see how this running back room really performs, because I think the one thing that we saw last year towards the end of the year was how Pitt was not able to throw the football consistently because they lacked being able to run the football. Now, that didn't have just an only attribute towards the running back room, though the offensive line room was not good. Numerous injuries up front. At that point, we had lost Branson Taylor, Ryan Jacoby, plus Lyndon Cooper at times. We moved Ryan Bayer from right tackle to left tackle. We were putting people in places that they probably shouldn't have been. So this year, we'll be able to really judge this football team going forward as we're able to see exactly how they're able to perform and what kind of level we can watch these guys really perform at. So the running back room for me, I'm a little bit nervous about that. But so far, Desmond Reed, Joel Goff, and Jakirian Boozy Turner have really taken a hold of that position. Those will be the top 3 guys at that running back position. And I think that you'll hear another name on here that we'll talk about, a guy who's really performed at a high level so far through 5 practices, Tony Kinsler, wide receiver, true freshman. I wouldn't be shocked if something ever came about that they had to move someone back and forth. Tony Kinsler could be one of those guys because he's very athletic and played running back in high school along with wide receiver. So he could be one of those guys that switch it back and forth. Hopefully, we don't need to go that route. That's number 1. Number 2, players that we've heard that are really starting to step up this year. And, just through first 5 days of camp, the first 2 are really in helmets, and that's it. So really 3 practices where you're able to really watch these guys. Jeremiah Marcelin has been talked about a lot, the redshirt freshman linebacker out of Florida. Has really done a good job during the offseason, has done a good job in spring camp. We've heard a lot about his name then. The OTAs during July really started to separate himself, and so far during camp here so far, he's done a great job. And again, we've talked about this before. Ryan Manilak has really turned that room around to where it's performing at a high level, and you start to say to yourself, hey, we've now got multiple years of legitimate starters who have played at a high level. Kyle Lewis returning, a returning All-American. He'll be an All-American again this year. I'd be shocked if he doesn't. Rasheem Biles has the potential to be first-team All-ACC potential All-American season. Braylon Lovelace, another guy that's in there. I expect him to be a starter going into this season. He's going to be having a hell of a year, the hometown hero out of Leechburg. But behind them, Jeremiah Marcelin, Cameron Lindsay, and then Jason Bonsu, the other transfer, was running really between safety and linebacker. The 4-star transfer from Ohio State, has been working more with the linebacking crew. So really, those are your top 6 guys you have right there. That linebacker room has done a good job of developing depth. And over the years, Pitt has been able to put a number of guys into the National Football League. So Jeremiah Marcelin is doing a hell of a job. Another name that's been a young guy who's been doing really well, and a guy to watch out for, they call him Drip, and that's Shadarian Drip Harrison, a cornerback, a guy who has done a really good job to this point. Came in at Pitt when he was a true freshman, came in a little bit banged up, obviously had an unfortunate issue off the field where no fault of his own, but an issue that he was involved in that created an injury, did not play last year, came back extremely healthy this year, 100%. And he's done a hell of a job at the cornerback position. He's going to be a part of that 2 deep right now, probably in a backup position behind Rashad Battle and Tamon Lynham. Tamon Lynham and Rashad Battle at 1 and 2. Then you have Shadarian Harrison at 3, and then probably Rashawn Murray at number 4. And then you still got Zion Ferguson, the 4-star cornerback transfer from North Carolina. He's back there as well. You've also got Nigel Maynard back there. So a number of guys who are truly working themselves up the depth chart and creating more and more people in that cornerback room. And if there's one position I'm not very concerned about at all, no matter dependent upon numbers or anything else, it's the cornerback room. I think Pat Narduzzi has earned the right to get a a number of slack or a high level of confidence because of the number of guys that Archie Collins and Pat Narduzzi have produced at that position and are now playing in the National Football League. The numbers truly speak for themselves. So at that point, I'm extremely happy about the cornerback room. And when you have 4 or 5 guys you can rotate into that room, I think it's a damn good way to put those guys on there. So that's really good. Shadarian Harrison, another cornerback that continues to climb up the charts. I didn't talk about in that room. Sean Lee was a kid out of high school, went to a prep school last year for his first year, but didn't count towards his college eligibility. He's now a true freshman at Pitt, but really has that 1 year of post-high school experience. He has really, they said he's not the biggest guy in the world, but a guy, he's got the stuff. Pat Narduzzi said he's got the stuff. And again, he's going to be a guy that touches the football field this year. His dad, a hell of a football player in Pennsylvania, played football at Penn State. Penn State didn't take him. People talked about potentially his size maybe not being big enough. I think Pitt has really shown they'll be willing to take a number of different guys at different levels when it comes to size, whether it's over 6 foot or under 6 foot. Marquez Williams was another one of those guys that people said, hey, he can't play. Clemson had an offer out to him, but thought, he wasn't big enough. Well, comes to the University of Pittsburgh and performs pretty damn well and was a multi-year starter. I think Sean Lee could be another one of those guys who eventually, after a couple years, hits that starting role because of how good of an athlete he really is. And if you look at his stats in high school and his prep school year, he did a hell of a job. I mean, the numbers and the actual stats are through the roof. He's a hell of an athlete. And a guy, if you're a hell of an athlete, you could play in this defense, especially in the attack style defense that Pitt plays. This is a really damn good pickup. And Sean Lee has done a really good job between spring, July OTAs, and now to the first 5 days of camp. He'll be exciting to watch as the day goes on. At the safety position, you think about the safety room with Cruz Brookins and Javon McIntyre leading that group. You've also got Jesse Anderson back there, Kazir Baines, the UC Davis transfer, but also add in there Joshua Gurrier, true freshman at the safety position. He's going to be a guy, in my opinion, that he's going to be on the football field this year. I think it's going to be hard to keep off. I heard his name a lot during the spring camp. Heard a lot of his name during the OTAs and during the summertime. The guy put the work in, understands the defense, which is a rarity for a guy as a true freshman who can come in here where you watch guys like, Jordan Whitehead specifically at the safety position who played at a high level but understood the defense even as a true freshman. Joshua Gurrier seems to be a guy that understands the knowledge of what the defense is trying to do, setting everyone up in front of you, and then being able to commit and play at a high level without thinking as much. I think he's going to be playing a lot of football for the University of Pittsburgh, and I think he's going to be playing a lot of football this year. And again, we sit here today, Archie Collins and Corey Sanders just continuing to develop talent and build out those rooms. You just, at the end of the day, those two guys do one hell of a job. I mean, Ryan Manilak, Archie Collins, and Corey Sanders, staples of this defense. Corey Sanders and Archie Collins been here, quite a bit of time. 9-10 years almost for University of Pittsburgh. And then with Pat Narduzzi, they've done a hell of a job in putting guys in the National Football League. I think we trust them there. And they really got 4 or 5 guys to rotate in there. But I still expect Javon McIntyre and Cruz Brookins, the 2 hometown kids, the hometown heroes, to really anchor that back end for the University of Pittsburgh defense. Next up on this list that we talked about a little bit earlier on, wide receiver Tony Kinsler, true freshman that comes in. He's done a hell of a job. He's been quite a bit of a surprise. They said really working into this Cade Bell offense. Now, he's done a really good job. Now, how many repetitions does he get in a game? Because you still got Kenny Johnson there. You still got Deuce Spann there. You still got C.J. Lee, Raphael Poppy Williams. We'll talk about another guy on this list, Katurah's Blue Hicks, who has done a hell of a job so far, as I've heard. But how many repetitions can he get? We're not sure. Probably not a lot this year. I think he'll probably jump up the leaderboard when it comes to next year. But I can assure you, if there's injuries or guys need a break, this guy's going to be on the sidelines ready to go. And I think the early portion of the season, allowing him to slow play it, get into this offense a little bit, see what college football is about, especially the Power 4, allow him to adapt and not have to run into a situation immediately. Let the older guys play it out to where there is talent in that wide receiver room. It's maybe not as deep as you'd like it to be, but there's talent certainly in that wide receiver room. But Tony Kinsler, a guy certainly you need to watch. Jakirian Boozy Turner's also on that list too. I think I have him on my list here too. Don't have him on here, but he's certainly been talked about quite a bit, Jakirian Boozy Turner. But Tony Kinsler doing a really good job. A guy we just talked about on here, Kater's Blue Hicks, another wide receiver. The guy immediately, when anybody that I talk to just talks about the speed, the equipment of speed, the guy is just an automatic just mismatch when it comes to being able to be crisp in his route running. It's always great to have speed, but you want to judge a guy based on speed and not having to think when they're running their routes. They know exactly what they're doing. Their footwork is very good, and also being able to catch the football. That's kind of important too. He's done a really good job so far during the spring and really started to pop up even more during the summer OTAs along with fall camp here. During the spring, I think he was more of adapting to this offense, understanding this offense. As you can imagine, you're jumping into a new offense. Terminology, understanding where you need to be. There's certainly a lot of motions and misdirection in this offense for Cade Bell. Really was starting to learn this offense when it came about when he finally jumped in here, transfer from Louisville. He was allowing himself to learn, really took that next step during July OTAs when I talked to him or when I talked to people about him. And then immediately, so far during the first 5 days, he seems very, very confident in what he's doing, not asking as many questions, really performing at a high level. And we're only here in the first week. We got really a couple more weeks to go, 2 to 3 weeks more to go till we hit that first game. And then we really, allow him to play out against Duquesne, allow him to play out against Central Michigan. And then we find out really what this football team's about when they head to Morgantown to face the West Virginia Mountaineers in the Rich Rodriguez era. The return of Rich Rodriguez, a second stint. We'll talk about that later on and how I think it will not be successful. And history is on my side, but we'll look at it even more. Now it comes to the offensive line. A guy who has really taken a hold of the offensive tackle position at left tackle is Jeff Percy. Talked to the media, talked about how really it was a major transition for a guy like him going from Michigan, a very high level of running the football, roughly about 60 to 70% of the time throwing the football in their offense, then coming here, learning new terminology, but also being more 50-50, 55 pass, 45 run, where now you're in pass protection a lot more, allowed him to learn, really pick it up after those first 2 or 3 weeks in spring camp, stayed here, didn't go home, stayed here on campus during summer OTAs, during summer classes where there was nothing going on. And that really goes to the whole offensive line room staying on the Pitt campus. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 guys that weren't in the battle for starting positions that weren't there, but everybody else was there. I mean, it was an awesome. Honestly, I was so happy to hear that when a source reached out to me and said, these guys are taking this shit seriously this year. They're staying on campus. They're not going home. They're bringing in a trainer, an offensive line trainer to work with them for a full week. No one's going home. That was extremely big to hear. And that's why I think a lot, they have a lot more depth this year that we didn't have last year, but the work that they're putting in has really showed up, and I think it's going to actually be very good for them this year. And Jeff Percy is one of those names that you have to watch, that he's done a good job to where really at this point, I'm projecting him to be, as I've been saying the entire time, projecting him to be the starting left tackle for the Pitt Panthers this year. Also, another surprising name, really moving from tackle to guard, from guard to tackle. Jackson Brown has done a really good job at the left guard position. He's in a battle with Keith Gouveia, the transfer out of Richmond. Those guys are certainly going at it, the guard position, but Jackson Brown has really stood up to where he understands this offense. He's had a lot more exposure in this offense, got the repetitions that he needed last year, was a transfer from Cal. His dad, Tony, was an incredible football player here, as you guys can imagine. Tony Brown, a hell of a football player, offensive lineman. The guy was an absolute stud. He was obviously here. His son's now here, Jackson. Again, Jackson Brown really taking his game from here to here in terms of knowledge of the offense, actual repetitions last year. He's battling for that guard position with Keith Gouveia, which also has me put this name on here, Keith Gouveia himself. I've heard he's done a good job. That's why that battle is there. And personally, I love to hear how there's a battle at that left guard position, because we looked at this offensive line last year. The starting offensive line was good, but then when you ran through injuries, automatically the offensive line fell apart. When you're hearing now there's more guys and more spaces and being able to put in multiple positions, that's a good thing that you want to hear. Now, obviously, when we get down to week 3 and we start to see this football team face, Power 4 teams, we'll be monitoring this team a lot more than what we are now. But it's good to hear there's multiple battles, where last year you didn't really have those battles. You had a starting 5 and then potentially maybe a sixth or seventh guy. There's really 8 or 9 guys you can look at this offensive line and say, okay, hey, I can plug them in there because they've had time at the Power 4 level and have played at this level. So that's always really good. Keith Gouveia, transfer out of Richmond. Last but not least, Kenny Johnson. I love the comment that Pat Narduzzi talked about with the media, talking about how Kenny Johnson was in early, and he's been in early with wide receiver coach J.J. Laster, a guy who's really been able to teach Kenny Johnson route running. We talked about the previous regime under Taekwon Underwood, great guy, but really never understood the portion of route running, never understood what was going on there and what the point of why an offensive coordinator would call what they call. Kenny Johnson now has that experience, but now he's in the training room, and now he's in the wide receiver room with J.J. Laster, talking about his position and his job, but also what everybody else on the offense is doing when it comes to the tackles, when it comes to the tight ends, and then why each wide receiver is running each specific route. So that's something you love to see as well, and especially a guy like Kenny Johnson, where the numbers have not supported him being a wide receiver one, but the talent level is there. We have seen the talent level. We've seen him make the crazy catches. We've seen him really perform at a high level when it came to route running. This is that year that you want to see Kenny Johnson go from being good to great. And I think that there's a real high opportunity that he takes that next step this year. And I think so far so good, man, and especially too being in that room. And we need leaders in that room. There's going to be tough moments during the season. These guys need to buckle down. I talked about it last year, how I really jumped this football team last year, where after the SMU game, after that first loss, a number of guys who were starters really considered the year gone and that they couldn't reach the college football playoff anymore. They thought, okay, well, we have one loss. There's going to be a hard chance to get back into the AC title game because not many other teams had 0 or 1 losses. And a lot of guys, I want to say the attitudes, really whimpered and dipped. Those guys are no longer on the roster, either graduated or transferred. These guys that are here now, ready to take that next step and be very proactive and get after the quarterback, but more importantly, really provide opportunities, especially in the wide receiver room like Kenny Johnson. Go up, get the football, be productive, and truly prove that you are a wide receiver one, but also prove to the NFL scouts. The NFL scouts after last year said he's not a wide receiver one. These guys in the wide receiver room, besides Konate and Mumfield, they had issues behind Konate. These guys need to step up this year. I think Kenny Johnson steps up and really performs at a high level and really shows he truly is what we really believe he is, a wide receiver one, and makes those damn good football catches, but in big moments against Power 4 teams. Before we go anywhere else, guys, obviously the comment section is now being flooded. Let me see here. Guys, again, if you've not done so, we've got over 200 people in the chat here between X, Facebook, and YouTube. If you haven't done so, head over to YouTube, hit the like button down below. Helps with the algorithm. Hit the like button. It's free. Hit the subscribe button. It's free. It's helping us grow. We're getting more and more people to watch the show, but more importantly, getting more and more questions, getting more and more comments. So I appreciate that from you guys. Again, down below, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Also, the super chat button's down below. If you want to make a small donation to the podcast, get your question up on the screen before anybody else's. Jump you in line. Make a small donation down below, and we'll get it going. Talked about, appreciate you, WRW Pitt. Any surprises? We talked about a number of those so far. Smash the like button, subscribe, and join Alliance 412. Couldn't agree more. Any word on how Eli is looking in practice? Great question here. From what I've been hearing is that Eli is now back at 100%. And I talked about this last week because we reported, that really the first 2 weeks of spring camp, Eli did not look good. And I think overall, if you had to put a projection on that quarterback room, I thought Mason Heinschel was probably the best looking quarterback in the spring camp. But because why was that like that? Is there anything that could potentially respond to that? Eli Holstein, even from Pat Narduzzi talking about ACC media days, he was not 100%. The progression to get him back to 100% took longer than what they thought. And again, Eli went through many injuries last year, concussions, but also ankle and knee injuries. A lot of those things take a lot more time to go through. Now he's back 100%, and we've heard from Jeff Percy. I've heard from numerous people within the building that he looks exactly back to what he was the year, towards the beginning of the season last year. A guy that's confident, a guy that controls the huddle, making decisive decisions, but also not afraid to push the ball down the football field. And again, they're in spring camp. Spring camp. They're in spring training. Spring training. Wow, I'm just killing myself, guys. I'm thinking about baseball and everything else. They are in fall camp. When you're in training camp and fall camp, guys, they're facing each other at this point. And we've talked about this before, how the hype train could get up there. Multiple teams out there saying they're going to go for this title, all the preseason awards. I thought Pat Narduzzi actually made a really good comment. The preseason awards, no one gives a shit. No one gives a shit what they're doing as a preseason. What matters most is the awards you get in the postseason awards, because the season's already over, and then you're really getting awards based on your play. This is just projections of what they look like. And I think, there's obviously, I told people, on my spectrum from 1 to 10, my optimism, I was at a 7, because you want to see this football team perform first. You want to see them play other football teams. You want to see them play Power 4 teams. That's why, for me, when I really start to judge this football team is going to be week 3 against the West Virginia Mountaineers in Morgantown in a hostile environment, but against another Power 4 team. Now, that's really going to be what I focus on, because we're hearing a lot of stuff out of there now that could look really good right now. That's great. But it's almost like you're facing the same defense you've been facing. So you know exactly what's going to be coming. You understand the defense you're facing. As a defensive player, you know the offense because you've been facing the offense how many different times. The one thing I think is really good for this offense and this defense, though, for the defense, it's really good they're facing Cade Bell's offense because it's up-tempo. You'll never see the defense be, out of wind or behind a play because they're so used to going up-tempo. They're able to adjust on the fly and very quickly. That's always a really good thing. But you want to see this football team perform at a high level later on when it comes to really week 2 and week 3. Group of 5 teams, Central Michigan will be here. And then week 3 when they go on the road to West Virginia. But so far in practice, Eli has looked a lot better, but more importantly, back to what he truly looked like, in the beginning portion of last year, which is really good, which tells you he's 100% healthy and really supports Pat Narduzzi's claim that he is now 100% healthy. Cruz Brookins continues to look good. We talked about, Randy Bates putting out a tweet talking about how he's been a dog and being damn good during practice. He's had multiple really good practices, especially during the full padded practices, which has been really, really good. And again, he's going to be He's going to be the starter in the back end with Javon McIntyre, 2 hometown heroes, 2 hometown kids, which will be fun to watch. I think the wild card is the offensive line. It seems we are solid at center and right tackle. And I think there was some depth and maybe 2 more solid guys up there. This could be a 10-plus win season. Potentially, I've got them between 7 to 10 wins. I think there's always going to be a couple games where they just, unless this team takes that next step, I have them between 7 to 10 wins, and 10 obviously the upper end, 7 at the lower end. The offensive line, again, where I've really had more and more people that I've talked to, the center position, Lyndon Cooper, 100% starter. B.J. Williams, 3rd-year returning starter. He'll be back at right guard. And, again, a really good football player, right tackle. Ryan Bayer back at right tackle. Those 3 positions are good to go. Jeff Percy seems to have the lead and a commanding lead at the left tackle position. And then Jackson Brown and Keith Gavia really battling at that guard position. And from what my understanding is, too, Keith Gavia can play center. And it seems as if Keith Gavia is the backup center at this point, too, where if he was to win the guard position, if something would happen to Lyndon Cooper, Keith Gavia would move to center, and then Jackson Brown would move into guard, or even Kendall Stanley. Kendall Stanley has done a good job at the tackle position, left tackle and left guard. So, again, you have that multiplicity where you have more depth this year, where last year when someone got hurt, you just went, holy shit, who do we have? We have nobody. I mean, you're throwing a guy in there for his first time in college football, bad shit's going to happen. It's just kind of how it works. I mean, if they don't have any experience, they don't know what they're looking for, you're going to have potential issues there. But that's kind of where I have them at this point, that the right side, the middle, the right side of the line is good to go. The left side of the line is where you're starting to see those battles come into play with Jeff Percy and Kendall Stanley. Jeff Percy having a lead at left tackle, and then at left guard, really Jackson Brown, Keith Gavia, and I could even put Kendall Stanley in there as well as the camp goes on. Let's see here. Pitt Football Fan 19. Like what I'm hearing about this team as a whole, but trying not to get ahead of ourselves. How do you feel about the skilled position depth behind Des Reed and KJ? Pitt Football Fan 19, for me personally, as we talked earlier in the show, I've got major concerns about the running back room. Desmond Reed is not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the biggest guy, but also, he can't run the ball 30 times or 25 times a game, plus catch the ball 10 to 15 times out of the backfield. You've got to utilize your other guys in the wide receiving core, the tight end core. I think Holmes, the tight end transfer from Marshall, we were told that he was 6 foot. He's actually 6'2", so that's a really good item. I think it's really, really good. But when it comes to the tight end room, Jake Overman be the starter, Holmes is the backup, and then Malachi Thomas at number 3, and then Max Hunt at number 4. But the running back room, we talked about it before, is being a potential weak link because there was a lot of unknowns there. We talked about maybe lack of a bigger running back. But now you hit the first day of camp, you find out 2 of your true freshmen are out this year. Of the 3 freshmen that are coming in this year at the running back room, 2 of them are out, Jaylen Brown, and then the other one, Saquon Smith, he's out this year as well. So now you're really down to 3 scholarship guys, Des Reed, Joel Goff, and then Jakarian Boozy Turner, who's a true freshman. And then they bring in now Jalen Williams, the eighth year veteran, which is pretty crazy. Gosh, we talk about college football. I mean, holy shit, 8 years in college football. Holy shit. That's a lot of time in college football, brother. I mean, sometimes you just know when it's not your time and, move on with life's work. But, hey, good for him. I mean, we need him this year, so he'll be getting some touch, especially as a bigger back, a 5'11", back 225, goal line situations, but maybe during the middle portions of the field as well, so we'll be able to watch that. But the running back room, behind Des Reed, I like Joel Goff. I like Jakarian Boozy Turner. But, Jakarian, I think I want to see more of him during the season to get more of a familiarity with him. It's great to hear how well he's doing and how elusive he is. We've seen many different clips where he's just basically just bouncing off guys or making guys miss. That's always great, but you want to see it in a live game with with my own eyes, with your own eyes, to know how good is this kid? Can we rely on this kid? We have seen Joel Goff, so I'm happy about Des Reed and Joel Goff, but if one of those guys goes down with an injury, you're almost up shit creek. You've only got really 4 guys back there, and we talked about, Tony Kinsler, who's a true freshman, played running back and wide receiver in high school. Maybe he switches back to running back this year if they need him to. I just think that there's a lot of, and potentially there's another walk-on back there as well. So maybe they have really 5 guys if they have to go the walk-on way. But, I mean, just you don't want to be relying on walk-ons. But the running back room seems to be a little bit concerning with me, just for the professionalism of depth. I like Des Reed. He's an All-American. Joel Goff, that's great. Jakarian Boozy Turner, but you've got to keep those guys healthy. And it's great to have Desmond Reed in that game, but, he's going to need breaks too. How many times did we see him get injured last year from maybe running too many plays, or his body got beat up to where he couldn't play multiple games? We got to keep that guy healthy, but if he's out for a game or he's out for a drive or 2 series, there's got to be other guys behind him that can really pick it up. To the other question, behind Kenny Johnson, I mean, it's up for grabs, brother. I mean, when you look at returning guys, Raphael Pape Williams is back to being healthy. Had 2 torn ligaments in his both in his left hand and right hand, so we got that corrected, which was really good. CJ Lee, he's back at 100%, but they're taking him slow. There's no reason to run him through anything crazy during fall camp. I mean, you know what you're getting out of CJ Lee, and he knows the offense, so don't rush anything back. So those 2 are there. Deuce Spann and Katur's Blue Hicks. We talked about how I've heard a lot about Blue Hicks, man. I mean, this kid coming in from Louisville, from anybody that I've talked to, the people from Louisville loved him. They just talked about how their wide receiver room was pretty deep, had a lot of depth. So if you have a lot of depth, why would you stay there as a wide receiver? We can go somewhere else when they need you. So Katur's Blue Hicks, I've heard a lot of great stuff about. Deuce Spann has made some pretty crazy contested catches. So those 2 guys are there. So then you have Kenny Johnson, you've got CJ Lee, Raphael Pape Williams, Deuce Spann, and Katur's Blue Hicks. I mean, you're looking at 5 guys right there. And then Tony Kinsler, a young guy we talked about, Tyree Robinson, a young guy we talked about before, Zion Fowler-L, who has done a good job to this point, nothing crazy or spectacular, but he's doing his job. So you got other guys back there, but as the season goes on, we're going to start to see more and more of these names pop up to where players are going to say, hey, we got a lot of confidence in a lot of these guys, so it'll be fun to watch. Let's see here. I think our wide receiver room is severely underrated, JJ. Kenny Johnson, Poppy, Century Lee, and Hicks could be deadly. Also, this new running back could be a red zone demon. Yeah, Pitt fan held a Pitt. Again, the wide receiver room, I can understand being underrated, but I can understand why people are doing that, because Deuce Spann, while he was a projected starter, was going to be a starter week 1 for Florida State, had that injury last year. You don't know what he's going to look like, so people have questions about that. I get that. People also want to see Katur's Blue Hicks. Had a couple good games last year in that deep wide receiver room as a true freshman. So we'll see what he looks like. But I totally understand your point. There's a very good chance that they're underrated. But I think for all of us, I think it's more important to see it. And I think it's great. You hear a lot of stuff about Blue Hicks, Tony Kinsler, Deuce Spann. But it's going to be great to have CJ Lee back healthy. I think he's going to have another big year. We saw a number of big catches out of him. Kenny Johnson, we talked about him going from good to great, showing that he is that wide receiver number 1. That's what you want to see going into his last year at Pitt, in my opinion. I think he'll be off the NFL after that. The new kid, again, we talked about Jalen Williams, the 8th-year wonder out of Western Carolina. I think he could be, but just the wide receiver room has me really concerned because of just the lack of depth. And we talk about depth. The best teams in college football, at number one, have depth. Number two, they're dominant on the line of scrimmage, and that's on offense and defense. They control the line of scrimmage. That's what the greatest teams in college football do. They're able to just kick the ever-loving shit out of you up front, offensive line and defensive line. That's something that with Pat Narduzzi, you saw Francis Breakout talk about that. He talked about how this year's defensive tackle room, the only one that's really solidified is Sean Fitzsimmons because his PFF grades were just, through the roof. Pro Football Focus was just all over him saying just how well that kid played, how well he's going to play this year. I expect him to play highly well again this year. But then you got Nick James in there, Francis Breakout, the bread man, Jasir Whittington, Isaiah Neal, who's added more weight this year, which I think he needed to do. You saw him get really tossed around a good portion of last year. That's going to be good to see him take that next step. And I think Isaiah Neal will go back to being a great player with him adding more weight and not being that lighter guy where people are kind of moving him around. I think he's going to be a lot more effective this year when it comes to making bigger plays. So he'll be fun to watch. But the running back room to me at this point is probably the biggest concern for me, just because of the lack of depth and, having really only 3, scholarship running backs. And who knows, Jalen Williams can come in here, look like a demon, and all of a sudden here into scholarships, you have 4 scholarship, running backs. It could look like that. So we'll watch and see. But to your point here, the wide receiver room, I'm kind of with you on it. It could be very underrated, and we'll look at it, and we'll go back in time and look at it and say, hey, were you potentially right? Was I potentially right? Who the hell knows? But it could be underrated, but we have to see this wide receiver room perform at a high level against Duquesne, against Central Michigan, and then in the confines of Morgantown when we go to face West Virginia and hopefully beat the ever-loving shit out of them. Another question here. JJ, Wanstead was 2-2 against Notre Dame. Dudes is 0-4. Have to do it at home this year. Yeah, it's a really good point, man. He is 0-4. Under Sean Watson, they should have won that football game when they were up in South Bend. They lost that football game because the offense just was so bad. We even had a lead at one point, and they couldn't hold on to the lead because our offense just couldn't do anything. And then what was the other year? There was another year. Were we up there or were we here? I can't remember. There's another close game. 2 of them were close, and the other 2 were blowouts up there, and then 1 blowout here. But, yeah, I think he's got to win one this year. Notre Dame's going to be another good football team, in my opinion. Again, they've lost a lot of really good talent up front, lost their quarterback. If I had to put a number on it, it's between Kenny Minchie and Lloyd Carr's grandson. I would think Carr has the edge. I expect him to be the starting quarterback for Notre Dame. But the one thing that has me a little bit happier about the game against Notre Dame, they're towards the end of the year, so we'll know what they look like at that point. Hopefully, we're still healthy. They could potentially have injuries or staying healthy. Who knows? But obviously, they tried to go out and get a quarterback from other teams. They tried poaching and tampering with other teams and trying to get a quarterback. So if you were tampering to get a quarterback from somewhere else, you're not exactly 100% bought into what you have. And I think that there's questions about Kenny Johnson and a number of different guys. So, we'll see. But at the end of the day, that'll be a fun game overall just because of the question marks around them. But the question marks will be answered by the time we face them. And that's really the toughest part of Pitt's schedule, man. West Virginia will be a tough game because it's a rivalry game. It's on 9/13. It's their Super Bowl. Guys, I've been looking at a number of different stuff they posted on Twitter, on the YouTube channels, just to listen to see, hey, what's going on down there. Because obviously Rich Rodriguez is torching his own football team and just talking about how bad they are, which I've heard from numerous people down there that their defense has been absolutely god-awful. They went into the portal during the spring semester, which there was just no talent there. They brought a lot of people in there, just garbage talent. They've got a number of guys hurt. They can't make it through practice. The offensive line hasn't gelled. It's only 5 practices in, but you have all these new guys down there, whole different player, 72, 75 new players, whole new coaching staff. Again, I've said it before, that's a game they should win, at this stage of the game. They're facing the 3rd game of the year. You should win that game down there. In my opinion, it'll be the first time one of these teams won the away game in the last 4 games. So that'll be interesting. But Pitt needs to figure this out. I mean, it's the schedule will be tough early on with West Virginia. That's their Super Bowl. That they have to win that game. 9-13, they got to win that thing because that's they could lose every other game besides that. All they care about is that Pitt game and the nostalgia of that game. Then Louisville will be a tough game. They'll be a good football team. Jeff Brom, he's got Miller Moss, the new quarterback transfer from USC. I actually think he's a really damn good quarterback. I just think Lincoln Riley's an absolute shitbag and really just can't coach at a high level anymore. I think he's having issues adapting to the new world of college athletics and can't coach. Can't get a guy who can recruit defense or coach defense. That's why they've been so bad under his tenure and even before that. After that, you've got Louisville. You get the Boston College game in there. Florida State. People think Florida State will be tough. I don't think they will be. I think Tommy Castellanos, the quarterback transfer from Boston College, opened his mouth, and I think they're going to get their shit pushed in against Alabama in that first game of the year. So I mean, he's going to get absolutely torched in that game. I think by the time we face them, it's down in Florida State, Tallahassee. If it's still packed there, hey, it should be a tough game. But I think they should still win that game. If they have 2 or 3 losses at that point, it won't be as packed, and I think the energy will be out of that building. But the last portion of that schedule, when you look at Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, in Miami, those 3 games are going to be tough at the end of the year to close out the season. I mean, it's going to be some tough football games down there. That's a fact. Going to be very tough going forward. And then Georgia Tech, I think Georgia Tech, they got Faulkner back at their offensive coordinator. He's done a hell of a job. People tried poaching him. They almost beat Georgia last year. They should have beaten Georgia if the referees didn't absolutely botch that game and absolutely just completely screw over Georgia Tech. It was a bunch of bullshit on their end, but I like what they're doing. They've done a really good job of getting back into Georgia, getting Georgia talent. For whatever reason, they weren't getting Georgia talent for how many years? From a number of different coaches that were down there. Brent Key, he's a disciple of Nick Saban. I think he's just a really good football coach. And I think that Georgia Tech continues to really look to surprise people. Haynes King's back down there. Haynes King, not a very big, well-known guy for throwing the football, but a very elusive quarterback. Really being able to keep guys, really keep them in football games, and really being able to move the football down the field when they need it to, and really win those games, especially the close games when they need to. So that'll be a fun one. And then, of course, Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, and Mario Cristobal in Miami. Those last 2 games, really 3 games, will be tough as shit. But to your point here, Skisk, you gotta beat Notre Dame, man. To have those special seasons, you got to win some games you're not supposed to. And even though they went to a national title game last year, it's time to buck up. And I think it's time Pat Narduzzi showed he can win those football games. Pretty simple. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's beating number 1 Clemson. We've seen those games. He's beaten number 2 Miami. I mean, he's beaten top 5 ranked teams. I mean, hell, he's probably got more top 5 wins than James Franklin, for Christ's sake. But time to beat Notre Dame for once. Any chance we'll see an increase in formations using 2 running backs? Absolutely not. I mean, absolutely not. There is not enough bodies in that running back room to get, let alone 1 running back, let alone 2 running backs. You're putting 2 running backs out there, you're just asking for more shit to happen. If anything, I think what they'll probably do is they'll probably have more depth than what we think at the wide receiver position. Maybe you try to do something crazy where you maybe take off a tight end, you add another wide receiver out there, 3 or 4, potentially 5 wide receivers, go 5 wide with 5 wide receivers, and then no running backs in the game, no tight ends in the game. I think that could potentially be something right there, but definitely no way they're going to have multiple running backs in the game because it's a lack of depth. There's just no reason to do it. Dr. Williams, Speedy Tortoise in the house tonight. Did you see James Franklin's comments about scheduling Pitt? I did. And, it was, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess it's good to see those comments. I mean, he's willing to put this on the schedule, but at the end of the day, it's just talk. I think that when you look at their schedule now and how bad their schedule is, especially out of conference, I mean, Nevada, Villanova, Florida International, it's just pretty bad overall, and they're going to do what they're going to do over there because he's got to make sure he gets the 10, 11 wins every year. He has to make sure he schedules a certain amount of games. He'll never do what Ohio State's doing, for example. Ohio State's facing Texas, Texas is probably the best team in the SEC. Penn State's not going to do that. They had Auburn on the schedule. They talked about that. Auburn was like the second worst team in the SEC that year. That was absolutely fucking comical. At the end of the day, that's just not feasible. Would I like for them to play? I would, but at the end of the day, though, they just live in a world where they want to be rivals with Ohio State, but Ohio State kicks the shit out of them every year. They do this unrivaled stuff, and then you see online you see it everywhere on X. They just get absolutely torched online. I mean, everyone hates Penn State. it would be great to have it on there. I mean, it's a regional rivalry. It's a rivalry game. Everyone knows it is. It would be good, but at the end of the day, like, does it matter? Not really. I like facing West Virginia because they actually see it as a rivalry. They're not scared for the rivalry games like Penn State is. Penn State's just they're really scared to face those games where they have those Power 4 games, and I mean, it is what it is. Let's see here. I think Kevin Spell, running back from McKeesport, who committed to PSU, is now taking visits. Maybe Pitt can get in on him and solidify the running back room moving forward. The kid from McKeesport, Kevin Spell, he's damn good. I can tell you this: it'd be great if they could. He's committed there. It's a shame because he was really good. I liked him a lot. He was really good, but also too, Tyke Hayes, man. Tyke Hayes is up there. From people I've talked to, he was really close to almost hitting, almost decommitting from Penn State and going to Pitt. We'll see what that running back room looks like up there. Because here's the thing: Katron Allen, he's going to be playing a lot this year. He'll be gone after this season. And then who's the other one? Nick Singleton. They're both going to be gone next year. So you're going to have really 2 spots open next year. What are the odds those guys leave? But at the same time, though, they get other running backs in the stable. I think some of those guys get really tired of not wanting to play there, and there'll be some guys who can jump on board. I mean, I can tell you this: Kevin Spell, if he comes to Pitt, he's got an opportunity to play very early. I mean, that's just a fact. I mean, the kid's that good. I said the same thing about Tyke Hayes too. I think he's that damn good too. I wanted him to go from Aliquippa to Pitt and keep that pipeline going and just be a superstar. But I know obviously he's very close in connection wise and family wise to Terry Smith. So we'll monitor and see how that goes. But I agree with you. It'd be great if he takes it. Yeah. And then also, I wasn't, and the kid on McKeesport I liked. The kid from West Mifflin seems like he dropped in the ratings and some coaches really dropped off on him. And he's committed to West Virginia. I think I'm good with that. And then the kid from McKeesport, though, I think he's damn good. What do you think will be the biggest game this year besides the brawl? Yeah, you always have the backyard brawl, but the games besides that, I mean, there's a number of games on the schedule that I'm really enticed to look forward to. Notre Dame, obviously, will be a massive game. Miami, I kind of almost count like Miami like a heated game because there's always some bullshit that goes on during that game. They've had our number quite a bit. We've had a couple surprise wins that we've had in there where we just absolutely dominated them down in Miami. That game will be good. But I think the biggest game just depends on how the season goes. It could be early on. You could look at a game like if Pitt's 3-0 and they're going against Louisville, it might be the biggest game at that point. But I think if you're going towards the end of the year, if Pitt's got a damn good schedule, or a damn good record like what I think they're going to have, Notre Dame is that next game, man. I mean, it's Notre Dame. Eventually, like we talked about, Pat Narduzzi's got to win one of those games. Got to win one of them. That game, and then I'd even say the Miami game's big. That's kind of how the order I have. The next game besides the backyard brawl, because it's such a heated rivalry early on in the season, besides the backyard brawl, I got Notre Dame, and then number 2, Miami. If I had to go number 3 besides that, I would go Louisville. Louisville is that next one. Over under combined snaps against Duquesne, CMU, Cole Gonzalez 12, Mason Heinschel 6. I'm going to be honest with you. I think they get more snaps than that. And I think that, they're going to be very decisive on who plays. On the Duquesne game, I would think they play more snaps during those games. If it's a blowout, I wouldn't be shocked if they go Cole Gonzalez first because at the end of the day, you don't want to burn Mason Heinschel's red shirt. He is the future quarterback here. I mean, just from anybody I've talked to, from things that I've seen, he is the future quarterback. I think if Eli Holstein plays the way he plays, let's say Eli Holstein plays damn good this year, goes off to the NFL, Mason Heinschel's that next guy in line. But if, let's say, Eli Holstein plays well and he returns one more year because he wants to solidify himself in the first round, I think, he can come back for another year and then have 2 years of Mason Heinschel learning this offense, adapting to it, really taking off that next step. And then as a redshirt sophomore, Mason Heinschel, redshirt sophomore, junior and senior, 3 years of just absolute dominance at quarterback. And again, anybody I've talked to, Mason Heinschel was just that legit. My biggest thing is if Eli Holstein and Cole Gonzalez are healthy, I'm playing those two. I'm getting a couple games in there for Mason Heinschel and even the bowl game to maybe see how the bowl game goes. But under no circumstance do you burn Mason Heinschel's redshirt season. You do not do it. He's got 4 damn good years ahead of him where he's going to be an absolute damn good quarterback here. And from anybody I've talked to, heck, even listen to Kateris Blue Hicks. Kateris Blue Hicks said there's no way. He actually thought he was actually a sophomore or junior at Pitt, because there's no way a kid as a true freshman is playing that well. I mean, when your teammates are saying that, it's great when I can talk to other people and say, okay, what I'm hearing, what they're all saying about him, that's great. But when your own teammates are saying you're that good, and when you're that good, they thought you're a sophomore or junior, kid's playing good. I mean, kid's going to be a damn good quarterback for Pitt. And I can tell you this, his parents love Pitt. I don't see him going anywhere else. They're making smart decisions, and I think he's going to be very effective at Pitt. And there's an opportunity where he plays like he's been playing, and he plays it like he does during the week, and plays like that on Saturdays. Potentially plays on Sundays. Be prepared for that. All right, we're 55 minutes in, guys. I don't see any super chats. I don't see any other questions. Maybe we'll dive in here real quick. Just across the rivalry lines. We talked a little about them tonight. West Virginia, man. I mean, they are struggling at running back. A number of different injuries. Not a lot of bodies in their running back room as well. I saw a couple stuff pop up from the news conferences and the press conferences. Just, Rich Rodriguez again. We look at coaches who come back to that second stint, and I just don't see it. I don't see it succeeding. I really don't. And I think Pitt fans have seen it full blown. Pitt fans have watched the second year or the second stint of Johnny Majors, for instance, that was just absolutely horrid. I just don't know how this is going to go for West Virginia, and I'm not very confident in it. I think that he's a little out of his league. It's been 17 years since he's been, in the Power Four as a head coach. I think he's starting to show his age a little bit. The mantra, the hard edge, like that kind of corny stuff. It's just I don't know. And just how he says, like the portal, for instance, he's still looking in the portal to potentially add guys. Like the facade, and a lot of that could be just coach speak, but it's just okay, what is that getting you? And then just being a douchebag. I just don't get it, And well, only 2 running backs made it to a full workout, which I guess a workout for him is the full practice. Kind of how it is, Pitt fan H2P, thank you, sir. I know you probably want to put it on there. Hail to Pitt. Appreciate the super chat as always. Again, guys, make sure you want to super chat, make a small donation to the pod. Drop it down below, and we'll get you up on the screen. Again, spelled it wrong there, but I get what you're saying now. Hail to Pitt. But West Virginia, I've been very adamant about this, guys. And I think under Neil Brown, I understood why it would be a close game. There were other ways for Pitt to break open both those games. At the onset, Pitt should probably be 3-0 if they had just average quarterback play. 2 years ago when they were down in Morgantown, they should have won that game. Pitt should be 3-0 against West Virginia, but just horrific quarterback play by Phil Dracovic, just absolutely torched that game, and they still only lost 17-6. The fact it was that close, and then they said, well, they didn't have Garrett Green as our starter. We saw Garrett Green the next year; he was absolutely horrible. West Virginia fans were talking about how he was a Heisman candidate. The guy was so bad they wanted to bench him halfway through the season, and then he went into the draft as a wide receiver. He wasn't that good. And right now, it's their quarterback competitions between Nico Markiel and what the hell is that kid's name? Jalen Henderson, the quarterback transfer out of Texas A&M. I just, I expect if I had to sit here today, I think it's pretty clear that Nico Markiel is going to be the starting quarterback for them. And besides, I guess the Cincinnati game, we saw some good stuff there, but he still makes some bad throws here and there. We'll see what he looks like in the Rich Rod offense, but a lot of questions back and forth there you can really ask yourself about and say, hey, is this truly going to work? And right now, when I look at West Virginia, just the facade, just the corniness of the hard edge stuff from Rich Rodriguez, I just can't get to that point yet. I need to see it first. And he goes on these ultra rants, not even talking about football, talked about how players have everything. And I get to his extent of what he's saying, but it's just how is that benefiting you in getting certain guys there? You have an entirely new offensive line. I think on your football team, you have maybe 3 or 4 guys that have actually played Power 4 football. I appreciate the hatred for Pitt. I appreciate the the confidence that, he can provide, and just, talking about Pitt, but it's just like, dude, you could talk all you want, and then obviously the stuff with Beanie Bishop, that just added more fire to it. And I love how West Virginia fans were like, well, if that's what you need to get fired up, you've already lost. Well, they said the same thing last year, and Pitt won again. I mean, at the end of the day, I look at it from a number of different perspectives, and when I look at both of these teams right now, Pitt is a much more talented football team with Power 4 players. I mean, the West Virginia roster, I mean, they've got guys from Northern Iowa. I mean, there's like Campbell University. I mean, there's all kinds of guys somewhere. I mean, but then again, I understand they had a new football coach. You got to build up that roster and build up that team. But I mean, I don't expect them, and even the media really has them going like 4-8 or 3-9, just because the roster is just not up to par yet. He needs at least 2 or 3 years to recruit high school guys, but also go in the portal and pick up actual Power 4 players. He's got a long way to go. And again, I've said it before, Pitt should win that game. And if they don't win that game, Pat Narduzzi's ass is going to be on fire. I mean, on the absolute hot seat, because I will certainly be grilling it. When you have 72 new players and a whole new coaching staff, I don't care where the hell you play. Or if it's down in Morgantown and Acrisure on the banks of the Allegheny, I mean, you got to win that football game. There's no more excuses. I mean, they have a whole new football team trying to learn a whole new defensive scheme and trying to learn a whole new offensive scheme. Not one of their offensive linemen are returning. I mean, it's unreal. I mean, it's an entirely new team. Go win the football game. It's that simple. And I'm also excited. I've been tweeting out online, the guys I expect to step up, seize the opportunity. I want to see this football team and these players, because I can bitch about the coaches all I want and talk about the coaches and what the coach need to do and how Cade Bell needs to adapt as a play caller and understand that you need to run the football and be successful running the football so they're not dropping 8 like they did last year, and actually finding guys that are open, and plus the offensive line being healthy, Cade Bell being a better offensive coordinator, a better play caller, but these players making plays. It's time for Kenny Johnson to step up. It's time for this offensive line to gel and keep your quarterback upright. It's time for the offensive line to show up and really produce at a high level. The entire wide receiver room, show up and show out. And then the defensive line, defensive ends. Pat Narduzzi talked about how Jaden Moore really earned the other starting position opposite of Jimmy Scott. Behind them, Joey Zielinski, got to show up. Blaine Spires, got to show up. Time to find out what you can do, but do the full season. When you go through hard times during the season, like every season, there's a little bit of ups and downs every year. Is this team going to quit? Or are they going to buckle down and bust their ass and make sure they go out there and win those other football games and be proactive and find a way to get to the ACC title game? That's what I'm looking for. What type of football team does Pitt have this year mentally from a player standpoint? Are they going to seize the opportunity, or are they going to wither away again? It's time to find out. Are they going to finish? Are these players built to win at a high level, like the Georgias of the world, the Alabamas of the world? Are they willing to be built like that to where they're fighting and working their ass off every day to win 10, 11, 12 games? We're going to find out. But guys, I don't see any more super chats. I don't see any more comments down below. We've got over 623 people in here now. If you haven't done so, head over to YouTube, hit the like button down below, hit the subscribe button down below. I'm going to be joining some shows during the week. Also going to be joining some other shows, some potential other Pitt shows. I'm going to be joining on a show with Harry Paceris later on. The Berg Cave, we'll be having that set up before the season starts. If you haven't done so, the Berg Cave, and then Berg, Burgh Cave. Make sure you guys follow them on YouTube. We'll be joining their show and talking about Pitt football as we always do, which will obviously be a fun time. Awesome stream tonight, JJ. Thank you, Pitt fan. Hail to Pitt. Guys, as always, thank you for obviously tuning in again tonight. Another great show. The show is what it is because of each and every one of you. Truly incredible to meet each and every one of you. Met plenty of business owners and built a whole kind of network on top of that. Been able to meet a lot of you guys who have been able to network and do a great job outside of talking football and outside of talking Pitt football. Guys, as always and forever, hail to Pitt and hail to the ACC. I'll see you next time.